From the Aishin Broadcast Studio, it's the Executive Spotlight.
Welcome to the AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today our guest is Karl Falk from Botdoc. Welcome, Karl.
All right, Brian, thanks for having me. This is it's great to be here.
Great. Well, today we're going to talk about some cybersecurity and being efficient at the dealership. A lot of people think that maybe the two of those don't go together, but I'd like to talk to you. Is there a balance that dealerships can achieve between cybersecurity and efficiency?
So, Brian, there is, and it's never been more important. If we look at the banking industry or even healthcare, and I think that that's a good place to start, is they've been regulated for cybersecurity for 20 plus years. When HIPAA first went into healthcare a long time ago, it was a bit of a quandary. And cyber was a lot different 20 years ago than it is today.
Yeah.
It's evolved. One advantage for dealerships is they don't have to go through everything that the banks, the healthcare industry had to learn. So there's kind of this leapfrog scenario. The challenge is banks don't change often, as far as new technology or being very innovative a lot of times. Some are more than others, but same thing with healthcare, right? You're still doing things today that you did 20 plus years ago. So there's not a lot of change that happens. So a dealership has an advantage to look at, do I have to do the things that healthcare and banking are doing? Or can I kind of forget all this stuff that they've been doing for 20 years and look at how the world is structured today? And some of that is on their vendors, right? Their CRMs, their DMSs, their service departments and things like that. But from a totality perspective for a dealership, I think one of the things that's missing is truly the understanding that, cybersecurity is a baseline of their business. It's no different than, hey, we need to collect payments. Well, sure. Well, we need to have cybersecurity. And I think that's the challenge for the industry right now. And there are older technologies that are still used by banks and credit unions and even healthcare, that if a dealership were to utilize those, it would be a horrible experience for their customers. If anybody watching, I think if you think about your personal life and think about things that frustrate you, when you either have gone to a bank or just even daily life, going to a restaurant, and just the little nuances, and we talk about this all the time, it's kind of fun. Maybe it's not, but in our world it is. It's kind of fun. We actually think about when you go to a restaurant, think about what's happened over the last 5 years. So you've got pre-COVID and then post-COVID. So pre-COVID, nobody really ever used a QR code. Also, you had to present your credit card or pay at the front. And then they came back with paper and you wrote on it and then you gave it back. And that was the standard. And a lot of times you'd go pay at the front desk. I don't know the last time I went and paid at the front desk. And now, even at a restaurant, it's paying with a QR code. Yeah. And in fact, if you think about it, if you go one restaurant that is old school, where you're having to get out your card, put it in a little thing and wait, and then they come back, and then you have to sign it and then wait, right? And I think sometimes it depends on the restaurant too, because you get a higher end steakhouse and they're going to just do everything for you. They don't want you to paying with QR codes or whatnot. But more of that, hey, we're going to go out and have Mexican tonight, or we're going to go out and Chili's or wherever, and it's like, hey, we're going to eat and get out of there. We're not there to spend 4 hours and chit chat. And today it's a kiosk. You put in your card or you tap it, and it asks you a couple of questions, and you're done. Right? That's easy. And I think if you take that example, I know this is not automotive, but I have a perspective here because it's valid. And it's valid because you have to see what is the customer today experiencing in the other aspects of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I can scan a QR code and pay for my bill. And I don't need to download an app. When I have to download an app, I want to beat my head against the wall. Like, why? For me to go eat, why should I have to download the XYZ app to pay you? No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to log in and create an account. So now you see more of the QR code, it goes to a website and you just pay, and then maybe it remembers you, maybe it doesn't. And really, this is why Amazon has become such a popular tool in our lives, because it's easy.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge that we're at. And this is the challenge that dealerships are going to face, because every dealership has to come to the realization that cybersecurity is paramount, because we saw what happened last summer. Very unfortunate. Nobody would wish that on any of even their worst enemies. Nobody would wish that on them. But I think it was a good realization for the automotive industry that yes, we have to focus on cyber because it's here. It's been here for a long time. Cybersecurity, if done wrong, will ruin your business. Meaning you can lock down everything and make things super closed off and very hard and have a lot of security around everything, which is what everybody wants. But the point that it impacts your customer's experience and even your employees' experience,
yeah,
you have a problem because of I want to tap and hit no receipt and leave, because I want to scan a QR code and pay and leave. I don't want to have to sit there and sign paper. This is it's a little bit of a different example, but at the end of the day, you have to think about the decisions you're making in your dealership and how it's impacting not just your customers, but also your employees. Because if you put something in place and you say, hey, this is what we're going to do to protect our business, and it's so cumbersome and so challenging and nobody does it, you might as well not have done it.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Can you say CRM? Right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys in the dealership that don't even use the CRM. Right?
Yeah. We've been trying to figure out a way to make that work for 25 years now.
Correct. Yeah, and I think it's interesting. There's an adage that says that if you are expecting people to do things with you that they don't do on a normal daily basis, mm-hmm. to do business with you, then you need to rethink your business. And I think your employees are the same way. Because if you don't have something that's easy, convenient for them to use, and let's be honest, good sales guys are bulldozers, right? They will do anything that gets in their way of closing a deal, they will just run it over. Right? They won't go over the hurdle. They'll just run right through it. So that's where I think some dealerships have a challenge, and even the ones that run more corporately, like the Soul dealerships in Texas, very corporate environment, very structured. They still have sales guys that will just run through brick walls, and as you would want, right? You want those guys that'll beat down barriers to get a car sold. But at what expense too? Sometimes you got to think hey, we still have to make sure things are secure and protected and all of the above.
Well, let's talk about that. Is there a way for a dealership to have adequate cybersecurity without impacting sales? And I mean, it seems like you're kind of hinting to the fact that possibly mm-hmm. proper cybersecurity could actually lead that bulldozer salesman to the path of least resistance. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that we've really talked a lot about. Whether it's at the national NADA level or at more state level conferences, even in dealerships, is that you have to think about how the cybersecurity is actually being utilized at your dealership. So I'll give you an example. At a bank, we've been in other industries for over a decade. So banking, lending, insurance, advisory, big investment firms, a lot of them use our technology, some large Fortune 500 banks. So we were, before the FTC safeguards was introduced originally, I think in late 2021, we weren't even thinking about automotive. And shame on us, and I don't think anybody really was of the mindset that the automotive industry wasn't regulated for cybersecurity, given all the financial and personal information they have from customers. When a dealership looks at how to balance everything, there are things that can run in the background. And if you can put things in the background that just run regardless, perfect. So doing regular penetration tests on all your systems, right? That's not something that's going to, fixing holes digitally. We always talk about cybersecurity like a big kingdom with a castle and a wall around it and a moat. Old day protection. So you have to make sure you don't have cracks in the wall or, areas where people can actually get into your system. So that's why we do, penetration tests and things like that. So fixing all those doesn't impact your operations. If they go down, of course it does.
Yeah.
But the instant you have to put the onus of cybersecurity and other tools that impact how your employees work or how your customers engage with you, that's where the problem happens. Because unlike any other industry, you've got a lot of turnover in automotive. I read one article that said I've seen 40 to 50, I've seen 60 to 70% turnover every year in the sales staff. I don't know what the number is, but it's more than other industries. So you have a continual staff that you have to train and retrain, and expectations on, no, this is how we do business at this dealership. So there is an inherent challenge there, but there are ways to look at how to make the dealership secure and also actually make it more efficient. And the biggest challenge will be if a dealership implements anything related to a cultural change. Mm-hmm. So when you have to change the culture, not just of your dealership, but of an industry, that's where the problems come. Because changing culture is hard. It is extremely hard. And there's one specific piece that is a challenge, and that is, I would even still say today, but even before the FTC safeguards went into play, every salesperson texted everything with their customers. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about pay stubs, bank statements, licenses. They would take a picture. Oh, I don't want to have to run back to the scanner. Let me just take a picture of your ID. I'll do it later. You cannot go even today, you can't go into any dealership and not see hundreds, if not thousands of pictures of customer personal information on salespeople's devices. And it's not because they want to do inherently bad things with it. It's just that's the culture. Some of our banking clients, asking about some of the unique things that Botdoc's doing in automotive, and which is now bleeding back to our banking customers. Some of the things that we've created in automotive specifically because automotive is different. But, telling our banking clients that, one of the big culture issues is texting personal information, and their faces go white. They're like, what? Because they grew up in an era where, where there was cybersecurity before texting was really a big thing. So they never adopted that as an industry standard. Where automotive, they're a little bit hamstrung because texting right now is the standard. And some people, if you take the extreme of the federal regulations, they will say, well, they shouldn't be using their personal devices to text at all. And I think I don't think that's the right approach, because a lot of dealerships that have that repeat clientele, they have relationships with those salespeople. So just texting them, hey, John, I know it's time for you to redo that lease. Yeah. Hey, once you come in, we've got the new this or whatever. They've got a relationship with that salesperson. If they're getting a text from a number they don't know and say, hey, this is John. Oh, is this your new number? No, it's the number from our CRM. I'm going to text you on the other one, right? Me personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a conversation over your personal text for sales. What becomes a problem is then when it becomes business is how do you make sure that that's secured? That's where some of the problems happen is, hey, John, we need your pay stub. If it was the banking world, we say, hey, we'll log into your portal for this loan, our LMS, loan management system. Mm-hmm. And if a car dealer were to say, oh, well, hey, so-and-so buyer, you're going to have to go to this website, download this app, create an account to buy the car. From a customer experience standpoint, that's not a good experience. Yeah. So the easiest thing is, hey, just text me a picture of your license, or text me this, or text me that. And so that's a problem. That is probably one of the biggest challenges for automotive that has to change. I believe that when the FTC starts digging around, and if we look at what happened in HIPAA, so it was a good 3-4 years before the government really started dropping a hammer. Mm-hmm. And we're getting close to that. The problem is that the FTC can actually go back in time and say, hey, we need to look at everything from this period to this period. And anything after June of 23, they can look at. Yeah. And that makes me nervous because they can subpoena text records and phone records from every employee that worked during that time period, whether they're there at the dealership or not. Will they do that? They can. And I think that's I actually believe that this is one of the biggest issues that no one's really addressing. People are kind of talking about it. And if I was an owner, if I was the owner of a automotive group or a dealership, in some aspects in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I don't care about anything other than selling cars. I just want to sell cars, and I want to service the cars, and I want to provide the best possible. Well, maybe some say the best possible experience. Other ones just want to push them out and get them out the door. But if you want to make it easy for them to buy cars, which everyone should, yeah, and that's why Amazon is such a great resource because it's easy. Can I buy everything on Amazon? Can I go to Home Depot? Can I go to Walmart? Can I go to wherever and get those things? Absolutely. But I'd rather hit a button than get in my car and drive around to 5 different places. Oh, yeah. Right. So at the end of the day, if you got to make it easy. But if a dealership, and this is really any entity in the nation, doesn't matter the industry, if you are ignoring some of the basic issues around exposure of your customers' information, and I know that sounds like, it's like talking to a lawyer sometimes. You're like, oh, whatever. You're way too, restrictive on your thinking, right? Yeah. You have to, live a little, whatever. But you have to think about if anything that's sent via text or email or communicated in an unsecure environment, because text and email is not secure. It's not. You have to expect that anything you text or email is going to be read by somebody who it's not intended for. That is a guarantee. Just last year, it came up that bad actors have been listening to text messages between different phones and different carriers. And that was there for a long time and nobody knew about it. So the problem for a dealership is if you're ignoring cybersecurity, what you're really saying to your customer is we don't care about exposing your information to people that are going to do bad things with it. And I think that's a brand thing for a dealership is if you do truly care, this has to be something on the forefront. And it comes back to, again, you don't want to wreck the whole experience at your dealership over trying to make it so protective and so secure.
Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcock's Media.
I mean, if I text you a picture of my driver's license, I text you a picture of my pay stub, I text you all the information that's on my credit app, and then if that's as exposed as that, that's really no different than if I had a deal folder,
Correct.
and I left it sitting at the receptionist desk and just left it sit there for a couple days, right? I mean, it's nobody would ever do that, but it sounds like that's what we are doing.
Correct.
In the form of these text messages.
It is. And so just to kind of paint a picture, and this freaks you out a little bit when you think about it, but if I said, Brian, hey, text me a picture of your driver's license, even if we're iPhone and it's iMessage, doesn't matter. So, that's a little bit different. I'll come back to that because that is a little bit more secure, but it still doesn't work. But if we were, AT&T, T-Mobile, right? The problem is you take a picture of your license. Traditionally, people are taking a picture and then texting it. So you've got a picture of that license on your phone, which isn't necessarily a problem because you're the customer. You can do whatever you want, but you attach it to a text message and send it. So now it's going to AT&T, and now it's in AT&T servers. And we all know, we've all heard the stories about courts, but using subpoenas to go and get all those records. Well, so AT&T has to store all that information. So AT&T also has a bunch of different redundant locations in case servers go down, et cetera. They're not losing text histories or whatever. So they've got redundant locations, let's say 5 locations where all that information is stored, and now they've got to pass it over to T-Mobile, which is not encrypted. That exchange is not encrypted. So when it comes over to T-Mobile, same thing. It's going to be in multiple locations. And then I'm ultimately storing it to my phone. And then in order to get it out of my text history, what do we do with a picture? Save it to our phone.
Yeah.
And then if I'm the salesperson, I want to think about that. What do I have to do with that image? I got to get it into the dealership.
You got to print it.
I either print it, or most people will then save it to their photo camera history, and then they email it to themselves. And then they'll download it at the dealership and then either print it or store it or whatever. So there's like 15 plus copies of those items littered around everywhere, digital and paper. We call them poisonous breadcrumbs because they're just littered everywhere. So this is where, when you really start to think about stuff, this is a problem. And most people's photos are backed up into the cloud. And they're sharing with their families. Like I know, like our pictures, we have family shared pictures and stuff when we back up on Dropbox and other things like that. So now you've got to, really think about that, and you've got a huge issue of somebody working at a company that's taking pictures of consumer information, and then it's on their phone that's backed up to the cloud. So this is why this is a very, very dirty problem. But this is hard, because it's cultural. If you go to a dealership that said, can't text anymore, it doesn't work. Because your customers are expecting easy, and a lot of the alternatives aren't easy. So this is why we've really, I'll be honest with you, Brian, when we first, like I said, in 2001, we started getting phone calls from larger dealership groups that were ahead of the curve, and I applaud them, because this was 2001, and they were already starting to think about this. And many of them said, we don't know what to do, because we're not going to get our people to stop texting. Even if we drop a hammer and say, you can't do this anymore. It's just an industry culture. And this is one of the things that we've really pushed the limits of, even in the banking side. Our whole premise from Botdoc standpoint is how do you keep things secure, but also make them easier to do. I'll give you a story. I'm a big fan of stories. So I can't tell you the name of the company if I tell you the use case or the scenario. So I won't say the company. We'll just say it's a very large financial institution. They had they had an issue, and the issue is they had some products that they sold, and a majority of the time when those products were, somebody engaged and said, hey, I want to buy this. Could have been a new deposit account, some insurance, but it's a banking product. a majority of the time of the respondents, they had to do some kind of follow-up with, hey, we need to see another, co-borrower license, or we need to see some bank statements, or maybe some tax returns, or whatever the scenario was. And of the ones they did a follow-up on, which is a majority, so over 50%, 40% of the time they dropped off. And they attested the number one issue to the complexity around getting those items, because they were saying, hey, secure email or fax. And the customers are like, the secure email, I logged in, I got to reset my password. They're like, I'm locked out. And so then you had the salespeople who were being more of a tech support, because they know it's banking. They knew they had to do things securely, but they had 40% drop off. So it means that 40% of the time on follow-up, the number one reason they attested that to was because of the complexity of the solutions they were using. Because the customer got frustrated and just said, I'm out. I'm going to go get this from somebody else. So something happened. We don't know if it was an exposure or if it was related to some kind of compliance review or whatever. But in that situation, what do you think a good salesperson is going to do?
He's going to make it easy.
Right. He's going to say, you know what, Susan, I know you don't have a scanner. Just take a picture of it with your phone and just email it to me. I'll take care of it. Or, just text it to me. Here's my phone number. Because that's what you do, right? You're not being a nefarious actor saying, oh, I want some hackers to intercept these messages and harm the customer. Nobody's thinking about that. But I think this is a great example of automotive, because you've got really good salespeople, and if that customer is frustrated at all, and a good salesperson senses that, they go into, let's just get it done. Yep. And I think that's great, right? And that's what you want. You want those guys in your institution. We'll take this example from this lender, is that they ran into huge issues because their guys were just, they call it shadow IT. They were using whatever they wanted to get stuff done, and they had a big compliance issue over it. So they ultimately needed something easier, and that's really where Botdoc plays in the game. We're a cybersecurity tool all around end-to-end encryption and moving things back and forth, but making it easy. No pins, no passwords, no logins, no accounts to set up, apps to download. And that's really kind of our superpower for us.
Tell me how that works. I mean, I definitely want to talk to you a little bit about your Air Force Academy experience.
Absolutely.
But before we get to that, tell me how it works. How do you make it easy?
Yeah, so it's the combination of encryption and how the data flows and how it's all put together. But the hardest things to do in life are some of the simplest experiences. So it's easy to go out and create a bunch of software that does a bunch of stuff that's a horrible experience. That's easy. But to create something that's very unique and simple and easy to use, like, a lot of people, the reason they like iPhones is because it's just intuitive.
Yeah.
It's easy. That's why they're the number one phone, smartphone. So for us, what we actually created was an accident. Wasn't really, it was unintended. We created on purpose, but it was for a very unique use case in the defaulted mortgage industry coming out of the crash. And there had to be a very, very simple process, and it had to be secure, and it had to be with a customer that needed convenience, somebody who was not making their payments, distressed, and logging into something, over free Wi-Fi, and not needing a PIN or a password, an account to set up. So what we ultimately did was we created the ability to utilize text and email as a delivery mechanism to communicate back to the system. So whether it's between two humans or if it's between a core system and a human, the flow of that data and how it's encrypted, and the user experience for them just made it very, very easy. So we kind of talk about it like FedEx. So our clients in the banking industry call us the secure FedEx of data, because we're just in the business of picking things up and dropping them off. So one of the unique things we do is very similar to a FedEx, is we create boxes and packages and containers and allow people to send things back to the company, right? In this case, could be a bank, could be a dealership. And in doing so, once we deliver that information where it needs to go, we actually overwrite and delete it out of our system forever. Just like FedEx giving you a package and says, I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
So that's how we really incorporate it. But it also comes down to is how do you leverage it and how do you get the information on the back end? So we do a lot with our API. And this is why large investment firms like Edward Jones uses our technology, all their 19,000 offices, and it's because they want it to be easy for their customers.
So Karl, tell me, like let's go back to the dealership and talk about, I'm at home, you need my driver's license.
Yeah.
I have my phone, I don't have a scanner. Well, what does that look like? How do I get you my driver's license to you in a way you can use it that's secure and compliant?
Absolutely. So there are 4 different areas that are important, and it's someone being remote, like you just said, or online, like the dealership website or whatever. Remote means you're sitting at home on the couch watching TV, and I text you. It's like, oh yeah, I want that car, right? Oh, I got 5 other buyers on the line, but the typical scenario. So you've got remote, online, and online can be anywhere, and you have in the showroom and on the lot. So those are really the 4 locations. And we actually spent a lot, I know that seems very basic, but we spent a lot of time and money sitting down with dealerships, large and small, over the last 4 years, really trying to understand how is this industry different from banking, because people aren't sitting at their desks, or they shouldn't be, right? They want them out in the lot. They want them talking to customers. They want them, work in the showroom. So those are really the 4 locations. And if you think about it, that's also where the employee can be. So you've got like 30 plus different iterations, scenarios of employee here, customer here, et cetera. So in this case, let's say that I'm at the dealership and you're at home and said, hey, I'm gonna grab your ID now because that way I'll have the car waiting for you, or whatever the scenario is. Normally, I would just text you and say, hey, Brian, just text me a picture of your license. And then we've got to go through the iteration we just talked about. And I've got to save it and email it to my phone, down at the dealership, and then what do I do with it? Then me as the salesperson, I at some point have to go into the CRM and enter you as a lead, which we know doesn't happen a lot. What we did was we said, okay, where in that scenario, where are the friction points? So the friction points are, if I want to be secure, you salesperson or you customer are going to have to log into something. Or me, salesperson, I then have to go into the CRM, create an account, and then I'm either going to have to send you a link, maybe you're going to have to log into something, secure email like the banks use, etc. There's a lot of friction in that from an employee and a customer standpoint. So what we did is we said, all right, we got to make this really easy. And I asked you to test this. I don't know if they'll get mad at me. They shouldn't get mad at me for saying their name, but I'm going to give applause to the Sewell dealership group in Texas, because when this first started on, that was one of their big points. They said we are never going to get our people from texting, because that's what the consumer needs, right?
So I would. Is there a secure way for me to text you my driver's license?
Yes,
Is that...
There is. Yeah.
Okay.
So. What we actually did is, and it's all through links, and texting becomes a delivery mechanism, but you can take things through another angle. So I could sit there and text you a link that goes to like an area to drop the document securely. The question is, well, how does this, if it's not easy for the salesperson to actually do that, they're not going to do it. And if it's not easy for the customer, it may be easy for them that, like, I could send you a Dropbox link and you could just drop it in a folder, right? I could do that all day long, but then I've got to set up all these Dropbox folders and all this other stuff, and it becomes a very big mess. So what we did is we gave each salesperson a unique URL, a Botdoc URL, that doesn't take you to a website, and this is where it's a little bit unique, but it's unique for the salesperson. And when the customer clicks on it, it randomly generates another URL that's going to be unique to that session, to that customer. And we have the ability to grab information about that customer securely, about their device and how we work. So when that customer sends that information back, we can push it directly into the CRM. And if there's information about that customer already in the CRM, we can append that to existing lead. And if there's not, we'll actually create a new lead. In that scenario, when the salesperson actually sends their link to the customer, that was one of the hurdles we had to figure out. Because again, are they going to go and copy and paste their link every time to the customer? No. Well, inside of emails, sometimes it's easy to put those links in the email signature block. Okay, that's great. But where does it go? If it comes back to me via email, okay, that's great. But now I have to then download it, put it in the CRM, right? So how do you reduce all those steps? Well, we figured out through our technology, because we track everything, IP address, geolocation, time and day stamp, for security and legal purposes. When a customer engages and we know information about them, we can utilize that information to push into the CRM. So if I ask you for your license, I can now provide you a link via text, and anything you do with that link will push directly into the CRM. So it bypasses me as a salesperson. So there's nothing on my phone, and it goes directly into the secure environment where it needs to go.
Well, it saves you time as a salesperson.
It does.
So
yes.
like when you talked about cybersecurity and efficiency, now that you don't have to type it into CRM.
No.
So basically, you send me a link, and you're done.
Yes.
I upload whatever information. It's sent directly to CRM. It either appends the existing customer or it creates a new customer.
Correct.
And it just saved you at least 8 minutes.
Yes.
So the salesperson wants to do it.
Yes.
He doesn't have to do it.
So anytime we onboard a new dealership, we actually, through the onboarding process, we make the salespeople use it at least 3 times as part of the onboarding process. And once the salesperson realizes, hold on, this is actually easier than doing it wrong. So I've got the path of least resistance no longer is doing it wrong, it's actually doing it more secure. This is where the elegance of trying to incorporate security into your processes, not just to keep it the same, but it can actually make it better. And if it's easier, if the result is easier, every salesperson in America in automotive will do it every single time because it's easier. The moment it becomes, and this is the challenge that automotive and other industries are going to face, is when you start putting in clunky, older, challenging, not efficient, or well thought through technology. I'm not going to say it won't derail a dealership because your salespeople just won't do it.
Yeah.
But the derailment comes at the cost of the customer's privacy and exposure, and potentially risk down the road with all those poisonous breadcrumbs lying around. Whether that's the FTC sniffing around, which nobody wants, or that's a hacker taking advantage of a dealership doing it wrong.
Let's shift gears for a moment. I know you went to the Air Force Academy, played some football.
Yeah.
Tell me about your favorite memory about playing football at the Air Force Academy.
So I'll tell you what, there's a lot of great memories. So I played back in the 90s. Fisher DeBerry was the head coach back then. And obviously the Air Force Academy is not a normal place to play football. You've got the academics, the military, and the athletic side. And my son's actually there now playing football. So it's been kind of this crazy whirlwind of, reflection and circle of life kind of stuff. We can talk about that a little bit. But I would say I got to play in a lot of cool locations. I'm going to give you 2. One of them is in '96. Air Force is always the underdog. It doesn't matter who we're playing. We're always the underdog. And back in the 90s, we would regularly play Notre Dame. And in '96, they were 8th in the nation. And we went to South Bend, Lou Holtz's last year at Notre Dame. So it was November '96. And we upset them in South Bend in overtime. So it was the first year of overtime for for college athletics.
Oh, wow.
And we upset them. And what was great about that was, obviously we went crazy. We're jumping around, celebrating on the field. And I remember looking up, and it felt like 5-10 minutes. I'm sure it wasn't that long, but I looked up in the stands, and everyone was still sitting there, and it was like dead silent. And I think everyone was like, "Oh wow, 8th in the nation, Notre Dame drops one to Air Force." And what was kind of cool about that, I say this is my 15 minutes of fame, was I was celebrating. One of the receivers jumped up on me, and I was carrying him around, and we were yelling. And one of the AP photographers snapped the shot, and it was AP Photo of the Week. So it hit every major sports publication or newspaper the next morning, and it was in Sports Illustrated that week. So that was actually really cool. So that was
great.
That was my 15 minutes of fame, and I remember, right after the games, you fly back, and you're beat up, you're hurt, you're tired, and you just want to get to bed. I remember in the morning, people were beating on my door saying, your mom's calling. Like, oh gosh, did your grandma die? What's going on? She's like, no, all our relatives are calling us because you're in there. It was in the Tampa newspaper, it was an LA newspaper. And so it was kind of a cool moment. But the other moment I think is really cool, and this, I talked to my son a lot about this, is so whoever wins the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, so this is the round robin between Air Force, Army, and Navy, gets to go to the White House. So in 98, so I graduated in 98, so Clinton was the president, so we got to go to the White House and do the Forrest Gump through the Oval Office. And
oh, that's great.
So that was actually a really cool moment. That that's what I tell my son all the time. I said, you got to beat Army and Navy, get to go to the White House.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
No conversation about marketing or cybersecurity or really about anything in America right now could be complete without AI, right? Yes. AI is everywhere. And in automotive, it seems like almost every conversation I have is around, lead gen, marketing. Never had one about efficiency. Yeah. And I know that you're all about efficiency. Where do you think, how is AI going to impact efficiencies inside the dealership, in the near future?
This is an awesome discussion, and we could talk. I could be here for 3 hours talking about this, because we are. We literally talk about efficiency more so than we do even cybersecurity inside our company. And a lot of times we'll say, well, we could do this, this, or this. In our premises, we will never compromise security for something new. And if something new can actually make it more secure, we'll do it, but not at the expense of how it's being utilized. So really, we have these really unique guardrails inside of our company, whether it's on our product side, our dev side, and we continually look at, well, if we can make it more secure, we will. If we can keep it the same security and make it more convenient, we absolutely will. But we'll never make it more convenient to reduce security. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we'll sit there and say, we can't do that. And then we'll say, well, how do we do it? And it might take us a long time, but we'll figure something out. So when we sit and talk about AI, it's AI for AI's sake is not a good thing. But I think everyone is now realizing through ChatGPT and other tools, it's making our lives a lot easier and a lot faster. There are some reports out there that say that, a significant amount of jobs will be lost to AI in the future. I can't wait for somebody to start talking about AI is going to need a labor union. I'm sure somebody at some point is going to have that conversation. But in some respects, it's like, well, what does the future workforce look like? So if we're talking just about a dealership, I think there's a lot of discussion now on AI on the marketing side, lead gen, lead follow-up. What can AI do in that respects? Here's where I think automotive is unique. It's still a major purchase for the customer. If you look at any digital retailing stats, still less than 3% of people are going to buy the entire car online, because it's still a major purchase. You want to know what the upgraded seats feel like. You want to know what that is the new V really worth the extra $50K, right? I don't know, maybe it is, right? So the people still want to sit in the car, they want to smell it, they want to feel it. So there's this experience of going to the dealership. So with a lot of the AI talk on automating and making it more efficient, the follow-up is better, right, from the tools. And I would say, like on the service side right now, a lot of the talk is how do we make it easier for the customers to schedule service, right? Mm-hmm. And if they call in, AI can tell them. They don't have to wait on the call. They don't have to wait on their service manager, right? And I think that that is incredible, right? Because you want to give the customers the ability to just get answers quickly, schedule things, right? They shouldn't have to jump on the phone and ask to the human that's doing, a bunch of other things. But where the conversation is not happening currently in automotive is how does it affect what's actually happening on fixed and variable side inside the dealership? Because if you think about it, okay, where some of the inefficiencies or choke points, and those are going to be different for every single dealership. But some dealerships say, well, we don't have our F&I staff here on Saturdays, so our sales managers have to do it. Well, that's some of our busiest days. Okay, well, even during the week, we have one or two sales F&I managers. So when we got a deal, some dealerships are doing 40, 50 cars, a day. If we have choke points that are humans, okay, well, all right. Is it because they're a human or just because it's an efficient process? Okay, well, could AI change that? Maybe. What does that process look like? I always like taking the extreme of the example and saying, what would a dealership look like with no humans? Okay, well, it's not online because people still need to come to the dealership. So me today, I think in the next 5 years, I don't think there's a dealership that doesn't run without, biological humans in it. But I think in the next 5 to 10 years, the typical dealership does not look the same. If I was going to make a bet, I think the future of a dealership should look more like going to the Apple store, mm-hmm. where we're guiding the customer through the process and they have the ability to choose your own adventure. And I think that's probably the best example, is it should be a choose your own adventure for a customer. That's why I think digital retailing is good in some respect, but it's also bad because not every customer is going to go through a structured process to buy the car. I think 99% of people are starting online, but then they're coming to the dealership. But then they might stop and they might go to another dealership. They might do this, we'll go back online, do more research. So every customer is a little bit different. So the challenge is how do you create a standard process around it? So I believe that the dealership of the future, and this is an area that nobody's talking about, is leveraging AI internal to the dealership. Whether that's F&I products, even during the sales products. And I'm not talking about robots walking around. Although if Elon Musk was here, I'm sure he'd say that's where we want salespeople to be, is robots walking around. But I think that the issue that has to the discussion that has to happen is what can AI do to actually expedite and create more efficiencies during the sales process and the buying process, internal to the dealership, showroom, lot, et cetera. And I think those are the conversations that need to be had that nobody's really talking about yet.
Well, Karl, I really appreciate you coming in today. Thanks for coming to Akron.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me out. This is you guys have a beautiful studio, and you guys are doing a lot of great things here. I enjoy the tour, and always happy to come back.
Great. Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for taking the time to join us for this AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today our guest has been Karl Falk from Botdoc. We hope to see you again on a future episode. This one's Over the Curb and Burning Gas.